In this chapter and in this paragraph that we just read, we see the reality of Arjuna's despondency. The reality in the sense that being a man of the field, what he could experience, no other person could have experienced. That's why we see, or Aurobindo is telling that this is a unique situation because his consciousness is completely different from that of a philosopher or a thinker. In fact, to add what he has written in this para, I'm going to read out something from the Bengali writings, a paragraph which explains much more than what we have just read. The attitude of Arjuna comes from a rising of the last doubts of the Karma Yogin. Remember, we are dilated on this. The doubts of the Karma Yogin, not of the Bhakta or the Jnana Yogin. There are many who, perplexed by world problems, the problem of suffering and pleasure, the problem of sin and virtue, declare an escape or flight as the only pathway to the good, and proclaim the virtues of an ascetic withdrawal from life, vairagya, and the renunciation of works. You see, Aurobindo is drawing here a comparison between the Gita solution and other people who have faced the same problem. The Buddha started off saying, what about this pain and suffering of man, how to get rid of it? There are other illusionists who say world is a place of suffering, how to get rid of it. So what have they said? Lord Buddha has taught that the world is impermanent and full of suffering and has shown the way to attaining nirvana. Others, like Jesus and Tolstoy, have been staunchly opposed to war, which has been the ancient law of the world, and to the system of marriage which contains the continuity of humankind. The ascetics say, work itself is the product of ignorance. Reject ignorance, reject all works, be quiet and actionless. These are all different kinds of solutions to escape from sorrow and suffering. The Advaitin says the world is false, utterly false. Merge yourself in the Brahman. Then why this world? Why this life? If God exists, then why does he undertake this useless, meaningless labor like that of an immature boy? Why did he start this arid joke? If the self alone exists, if the world is nothing but an illusion, why again does this self impose this ugly dream on its pure existence? The atheist says, there is neither God nor self. There is only the blind action of a blind force. But what kind of view is that? What is this force? From where is it born? And why again is it blind and insane? No one has been able to give a satisfactory answer to these questions. Neither the Christian nor the Buddhist, nor the Advaitins, the atheist or scientist. You see, it is only to tell us the immaculate relevance of the Gita to a world problem which has been countered and faced by many a people, many a great yogi and avatars in the past. The Buddha, the Christ, the great Shankaracharya, the atheists, the illusionists, and even the scientists. They've all found an escape route from this suffering. Then all are silent on these points and are at the same time eager to shirk the issue by evading the question. Only the Upanishads and the Gita, following their line, have been unwilling to shirk the issue in this way. You see, that is why Indian philosophy or Indian spirituality is so very bold, so very magnificent, so very universal. because it doesn't shirk a problem. The other yogis and religions, they shirk the problem. Some act like the ostrich. You know the ostrich problem. It hides its face in the sand and it says the world is not there. So some are doing like that, closing their eyes to the world of reality. And they say, no, this problem doesn't exist, it's an illusion. Some find that it is a big problem. And the Buddha said, get rid of it. Get into nirvana and forget this world. So there are all kinds of situations, but the Upanishads and the Gita are the only philosophies in the world which have accepted the reality and have shown the way to face this reality and not to escape it. In fact, that is the chapter that we are doing in the class, chapter 14 of part 2, book 1. Book 2, part 1. Where Sri Aurobindo counters the problem of falsehood, error, evil and all that, and how to face it. Because Indian philosophy cannot dare escape this question. Because if you say your fundamental line that all this is Brahman, finish. You are trapped. All this is in Brahman, all is in Brahman, everything is in Brahman. This is the triple formula. All this is Brahman, all this is in Brahman, and Brahman is in all things. Well, some philosophers took only one formula, like Shankaracharya. So they did not look at the reality of the world. So Upanishads, Gita, and now Sri Aurobindo are these three philosophers or three spiritual masters and world vision which face the world problem. And Sri Aurobindo not only accepts this world problem, but he wants to transform it. So that is why Sri Aurobindo is the most difficult, most bold approach, because he is a Vedantin at the core of his experience. So that is the beauty here when Sri Aurobindo writes, that is why the Gita has been chanted during the war of Kurukshetra. Acts terribly worldly, the killing of one's teachers and brothers and kin, these were the objects of the war. At the commencement of that war which destroyed thousands of creatures, Arjuna throws away the divine bow from his hands, and knowing not what to do, says in a pitiable tone, "Then why do you engage me in this terrible work?" In answer, there arises, amidst the din of battle in tones of the thunder, the mighty song uttered by the mouth of God, which says, I'm reading out the translation, "Therefore you go on doing works, the kind of work your ancestors have been doing. That work you too have to perform." Well, we will see all the advice of the Lord Krishna. But this is the importance that why Gita is one of those singular scriptures which faces this problem. And not only faces this problem, it really brings you down to this problem with a bang. There's no introduction, there is no preparation. Straight takes you to the warfield, into the thick of life which is a battle. So we will see as we go along a little more details. Arjuna is, in the language of the Gita, a man subject to the action of the three gunas or modes of the nature force and habituated to move unquestioningly in that field, like the generality of men. He justifies his name only in being so far pure and sattvic as to be governed by high and clear principles and impulses, and habitually control his lower nature by the noblest law which he knows. So we are seeing now the general nature of man, of Arjuna. He, like all of us, is ruled by the three gunas. So like the generality of men, he justifies his name only in being so far pure and sattvic as to be governed by high and clear principles. Arjuna, which is the meaning is the pure, says he is pure to a great extent, purer than most of us, because he has habitual control of his lower nature. Because Arjuna is supposed to have really mastered his lower nature, mastered his sleep, mastered his desire and self-control and all that. So he is a great sattvic personality in that way. Being a Kshatriya, still he has a wonderful sattvic nature. He is not of a violent asuric disposition, not the slave of his passions, but has been trained to a high calm and self-control, to an unswerving performance of his duties and firm obedience to the best principles of the time and society in which he has lived, and the religion and ethics to which he has been brought up. He is egoistic like other men, but with a purer or sattvic egoism which regards the moral law and society and the claims of others, and not only or predominantly his own interests and desires and passions. That's what we saw before too, that he prepares himself seeing the self in humanity. That's what he's telling us here. He is egoistic, but he has the sattvic ego. Although he's a Kshatriya, he does not have predominantly the vital Rajasic ego. The sattvic ego, what does it do? It really is predominantly concerned with others. He goes to protect other kingdoms, protect the people who are in trouble, helping others. So he does not manifest his own desires and passions. What all he does is more to help others, the humanity. So he has that kind of a altruistic ego, which of course in the synthesis of yoga, in our chapter on enunciation, we see that sattvic ego also is a great hurdle in the yoga, in integral yoga. We have to renounce the Rajasic ego, the Tamasic ego, as well as the Sattvic ego. But in that evolution, now Arjuna is in the Sattvic ego. The thought which preoccupies him, the standard which he obeys, is the dharma, that collective Indian conception of the religious, social and moral rule of conduct, and especially the rule of the station and function to which he belongs. He, the Kshatriya, the high-minded, self-governed, chivalrous prince and warrior and leader of Aryan men. So this was the beauty of our old classification of the four castes. They had a great nobility about them. If somebody said, I am a Kshatriya, then it was not just the duty of a warrior. He was proud of being a Kshatriya, means upholder of the dharma of Kshatriyahood. That means he was chivalrous, he stood by his moral, social, religious laws, and he was really self-governed. Just because he was a Kshatriya, like it happens in the modern times, you are a police officer, you are a commissioner, and you misuse your power. No. It was the Kshatriyahood itself was a dharma to be followed. Just like the Brahmin followed his dharma, Kshatriyahood also had its norms. You have the power, but no misuse of power at all. So that's why Arjuna was proud of being a Kshatriya, one who follows his own standards. He will not harm others for the sake of harming. He will not misuse his power. He will not kill people for the heck of it. So all this is the self-control. Following always this rule, conscious of virtue and right dealing, he has travelled so far and finds suddenly that it has led him to become the protagonist of a terrific and unparalleled slaughter, a monstrous civil war involving all the cultured Aryan nations, which must lead to the complete destruction of the flower of their manhood and threaten their ordered civilization with chaos and collapse. So this fight of Arjuna in Kurukshetra becomes so very universal because Kurukshetra itself had gotten that kind of a universality. It is not just the fight between two clans or two groups of Kauravas and Pandavas which we think it to be. The whole Indian nation was behind it. The whole civilization and culture was behind it. So he says, it was a complete destruction of the flower of their manhood. What Indian culture had achieved by then, that was in the balance. If Kauravas won, the whole Indian culture would go back by thousands of years. You see, it was a very similar situation to that of the Second War, in which Aurobindo says, if Hitler and the Germans had won, human civilization would have gone back by 2000 years. So there are some crises in human lives. It was not just a war of attacking Iraq or Iran or this or that. It is not Palestine and Istanbul or Israel. It was a war where civilization itself was in the balance. So because of this importance of the war, the one who represents the victory of the right side, the right dharma, his importance becomes tenfold, hundredfold, thousandfold. Why Aurobindo has given a whole chapter on this human disciple is only to tell us the importance of Arjuna. As I read before, if Arjuna had refused to fight, then all the planning of Lord Krishna would have come to a naught. Krishna had consciously prepared this war, and suddenly this man says no, then the whole theme would have gone to a naught, to nothingness. So, this man, Arjuna, represents, he is the protagonist of a terrific and unparalleled slaughter. I mean, anybody in Arjuna's position, I'm sure, would have buckled in. He would say, why the hell should I take this responsibility? And you will see the wonderful arguments he gives. Wonderful arguments of a mental man, of a moral man. And his logic is wonderful. Because where he says about what is going to be destroyed after him, he would say in this opening chapter, just I'll give you a sample of his saying. Most of you know that, but just to keep a continuity in the narration. O Krishna, on seeing all these my own people ranged for battle, the limbs of my body are feeling weary. My mouth is getting parched. We'll analyze each of these sentences psychologically. All over the body there is shivering and the hairs stand on edge. The Gandiva bow is slipping out of my hand without control. My skin is as if burning with fire. It is not poetic description, please remember. It is one of the deepest psychological analysis which perhaps the modern psychology is explaining. Maybe not even. Why does one's tongue get parched? The skin starts burning. Then the hair stands on edge. Then there's a feeling of the body feeling tired. You see, a man who comes to the battlefield and suddenly the whole thing collapses. Even the Gandiva is slipping out of his hand. Next he says, I can no longer keep standing. My mind is beginning as if to whirl, O Keshava. I am seeing evil omens. I do not see any good from killing my own people in battle. O Krishna, I do not wish for victory, nor do I want a kingdom, nor seek happiness either. Tell me, O Govinda, what do we gain from kingdom? Look at his logic. He's perfect moralist and a perfect moral thing. What do we gain from kingdom? What profit is there in enjoyment? Of what use is life itself? Those for whom kingdom and enjoyment and life become desirable are themselves present in this battlefield after renouncing their life and wealth. They who are teachers and fathers, sons and grandfathers, uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other relatives. O Madhusudana, if they kill me, even then I do not wish to kill them. Not even for the sake of dominion over the three worlds. And that's incredible. He says, even if you give me all the three worlds, I would not like to kill them. That is the acme of renunciation, of not wanting this world. What to say of the lordship of earth? Give me the three heavens and the three lokas, I will renounce, because this is a sin I cannot face. What, O Janardana, can be our happiness of mind by killing the sons of Dhritarashtra? They are out to kill. Nevertheless, to kill them would be to give shelter in our mind to sin. You see, let them kill. Let them have the sin. But why should I, knowing to kill is sin, why should I give in to this philosophy, to this action? Therefore, since the sons of Dhritarashtra are our kin, we are not the persons fit to destroy them. In what way, O Madhava, shall we be happy by killing our own people? You would require a real grand teacher to answer all these questions. Only Sri Krishna could have answered. No other human professor of philosophy or ethics or morality or religion could have answered these. Because these are fundamental problems of existence. Under the influence of greed, they have lost their understanding. And they do not appreciate the evils arising from a deterioration of the clans and the heinous sin of doing harm to one's friends. You note a sentence here? Under the influence of greed, they have lost their understanding. Wonderful psychology. What the modern mind is suffering with. You go to a super bazaar, a mall, you lose your understanding. Why? You are not able to have any discrimination because you are under the sway and influence of greed. So greed makes our understanding fuzzy, cloudy, no more clear. Then you say, I will buy this, 5,000 rupees, 15,000 rupees, 20,000 rupees. There are small things and big things attracting, arousing your greed. What do these malls do? They arouse this greed. That's where there are 30 different varieties of bread, 50 different varieties of cheese, so many dresses, all colors, all shapes, all styles. If there was only one bread and one style of jeans and one style of shirt and one style of this thing, you wouldn't have greed. You would say, no, I don't think I'll buy that, waste my money. It's a wonderful psychology of the modern consumerism that they have aroused your greed so that you lose your rational capacity. And then you spend your money. And the worst thing is, if you don't have money, you have your credit cards and debit cards. And how consumerism has really been planned by the devil as if to arouse the worst in man. You don't have money? Get a card. Finish. You pay after 3 months, 6 months. Hardly 1% commission, sir. What does it matter? So this is what dethrones your understanding. It's an extraordinary. That's why I'm saying this Gita, the more you read, the greater human psychology you'll get. When I read this, I really cherish it, how the Lord has been so very wonderful. And more I cherish because Sri Aurobindo has brought out this psychology, no one else. Others have brought about a religious sense, a moral sense, a social sense, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't appeal to me. Because morality and religion don't touch me. But the deeper human psychology touches me. So he gives us, and I'm sure this sentence all of us agree with, That the greed, they have lost, under the greed, they have lost their understanding. And Aurobindo elsewhere would say, not Aurobindo, Lord Krishna, you will see, when you get anger, the same way you lose your discrimination. To the extent you lose your mind that you are not even having the arhata, the right to be called human being. Wonderful. So it's not, anger is not just a feeling and then you quarrel with people and all that. But analyze to yourself what happens. Why do people in anger do all kinds of nonsense? Because they are no more human beings when you are angry. You have lost the right to be called. Extraordinary. I wonder and more I wonder the more I read it. So he says, and they do not appreciate the evils arising from a deterioration of clans. So Arjuna is giving a fantastic argument that they are under the greed, they have lost their sense, so they want to kill others, but why should I? I am not under the greed. So what is he saying? I don't want the world, I don't want the kingdom, I don't want this world, not even the three worlds. Look at his fantastic argument. So he is absolutely without a grain of greed. Therefore, he has an absolute clarity of understanding of the situation. Therefore, what I am saying now is absolutely cool-headed. Therefore, I shall not fight. Therefore, I am right in my judgment. What a logic. Lord Krishna, therefore, when he answers, he does not answer directly. As you know, he just, first he smiles. It's a grand smile. And he says, then he says, I'm quoting verse 10. On him, last sentence, on him thus overcome with weakness in the midmost of either battle. This Sanjaya is telling that the Gudakesha to Rishikesha, the scourger of his foes, said unto Govinda, I will not fight. And ceased from words. Tathastu, decision is made, I will not fight. And ceased from words. He says, nothing can now move me. So then, on him thus overcome with weakness in the midmost of either battle, Krishna smiled a little and said, he must have smiled at his great logic. Because here I thought Arjuna was a warrior, he's somewhat a good philosopher too. Krishna didn't expect Arjuna to be so very logical. So he had a lovely smile on his face and he said, Thou grievest for whom thou shouldst not even grieve, and yet speakest wise seeming words, not wise words, please see, wise seeming words. But the wise grieve not, whether for the dead or for the living. So we'll have that session, I'll take up that later. So he says, but what is wonderful is, after all this great logic, Shri Krishna has a wonderful smile. The smile of understanding. The smile of saying, here is what I wanted, to arouse in you all this question of humanity, which wants to get back into religion, into morality, into ethics. And this is what I wanted from you, Arjuna. So in fact, he pats himself maybe with that smile, that he has been successful to arouse Arjuna and bring out the logic of the modern logician. So, his work done, now he will give his advice. So he says, under the influence of greed, they have lost their understanding, and they do not appreciate the evils arising from a deterioration of the clans and the heinous sin of doing harm to one's friends. But we, you and me, you see how cleverly Arjuna, you must read it, between the lines. But we means you and me. It's not I. Understand the difference, please. But we, O Janardana, realize the harm caused by the deterioration of clans. Why should we not wake to the knowledge? Why should we not desist from this sin? So clever, he is not saying I. He says we are the clever people, we are the wise people. We understand the situation. So why should we fight? With a deterioration of the clan, all the established laws of right living come to an end. With that, unrighteousness overtakes the entire clan. It's like a I don't understand, I don't have the word. In the church we have the father who comes to the pulpit on the Sunday and then gives a lovely talk. That why you should not have violence, why you should not fight. See the logic of the man. So all this unrighteousness overtake the entire clan. See the logic, huh? First he said killing the clan, it will lead to unrighteousness of the clan. And then under the influence of unrighteousness, O Krishna, the women of the clan lose their virtue. Who would want that? Very touchy point. You want your wife and sister and mother to be unvirtuous? When the women lose their virtue, there is admixture of castes. It's a brilliant argument. What would happen? Try to understand this. It's the Kshatriya women who have lost their men. So there would be admixture of caste, then the Kshatriya women would be forced to marry the Brahmins, would be forced to marry the Shudras, because they are left alone without their own men. And this admixture of caste, Krishna, would you like it? Arjuna is too good. The admixture of caste is the step by step. The admixture of caste is the cause of the clansmen and the destroyers of clans going to hell, because the ancestors are thereby deprived of the food and water given them as offerings, and they fall from the world of the fathers. Another logic. If there is this admixture of castes, that is the cause of the clansmen and destroyers of clans going to hell. You see, now these people who will die in the war of this Kuru clan, they will go into different worlds. And then because the ancestors are thereby deprived of the food. You see, when you are on earth, we in India have the custom that we have this ancestor worship. What do you call this? Pinda or something? And annually you give that, monthly you give that. It does happen in my family at Hyderabad, but I don't follow, so I don't know. So please forgive my ignorance. I hear in my family it being done, but I have no knowledge. However, I know that there is this ancestral puja. I've seen this very much in Bangkok. They are far ahead of you who follow this ancestral worship. They are much more rigid and more elaborate on this ancestral worship. In India, we are not at all that elaborate compared to what they do in Buddhism. That's what I was amazed. Buddhism and taking to this ancestral worship in a more rigid manner than the Hindus. So Buddhism in Bangkok is a wonderful combination of Hindu rituals and Buddhist philosophy. You see the synthesis. And ultimately I realized that man does require rituals. If you don't have the inner experience, you want the outer cover. So that's why they've got this combination. And look at Arjuna, he says, look, that ancestral worship would be spoilt. Who will give food to the ancestors if these men are killed and they go to hell and they are not upon earth? You see, so many angles he's attacking Krishna. As a result of all these evils caused by the destroyers of clans and leading to the admixture of castes, the old established laws of the nation and the clan come to a naught. In hell is assigned the abode of those, the laws of whose clans have come to naught. This is what we have heard from of old. You see, he says, if these clans are destroyed, they go to hell. So that is what I have heard, O Krishna. Do you want all these people to go to hell? Whereas Aurobindo would say all these people in the war field would go to heaven. But Arjuna too knows that. But he will not give you that example. He will tell you what is suitable for him. that they will go to hell. Would you like all these people to go to hell? Lo, the extremely heinous sin we are determined to commit, that we are making efforts to kill our own people out of greed for the pleasure of dominion, such a niche thing, a choti si baat ke liye, we have to kill these thousands of people. It were better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra accoutred in arms should kill me when I am without arms and make no effort to resist. So ultimately he says, I would rather be killed in the hands of this Dhritarashtra and the sons of Dhritarashtra. I would not resist. So you see, he has lost the motivation to live. Dominion, power, wealth, nothing is attracting to him now. So he puts forward, with these words, his mind stained by the upsurge of grief, Arjuna threw away his bow and the arrow fixed on it and sat down in his chariot. I mean, you can see the extraordinary situation. I mean, he had even put the arrow on the bow. That man who is ready to shoot the arrow, he comes back and he collapses in his chariot. So this is what we have here, what Aurobindo is telling in the last line, that it would lead to the complete destruction of the flower of their manhood and threaten their ordered civilization with chaos and collapse. And now from there, it's a hard task for Krishna. Because logically you cannot defeat Arjuna. Because he has given you in an extremely logical manner what would be the consequences of the war. Of course, the present leaders don't even think like Arjuna. If only they had even thought like Arjuna, the world would have been a better place. That why this war, why this destruction, why this? We have our national ambitions, personal ambitions. And therefore he says, if you are overtaken by greed and anger, all your mental understanding, clarity of thinking, clarity of judgment, clarity of discernment is lost. So Aurobindo is telling us, this is why Arjuna's position was so very critical. It is typical again of the pragmatic man, that it is through his sensation that he awakens to the meaning of his action. He has asked his friend and charioteer to place him between the two armies, not with any profounder idea, but with the proud intention of viewing and looking in the face these myriads of the champions of unrighteousness, whom he has to meet and conquer and slay in the holiday of fight, so that the right may prevail. This is a beautiful word. And why this emphasis? The great poet has not just given you for the heck of writing. Arjuna comes in front of the army to kind of satisfy himself that I will have a fun in this fight. The holiday of fight, he says. And after this holiday of fight, I will be victorious. And I will give to my elder brother this entire kingdom. So, try to see this kind of a absolute 100% self-confident man who knew with a single battle, as a single man, he will win this fight of Kurukshetra. I mean, that was the acme of this human achievement. And what is that acme of human achievement? As a mental human being, he has reached the highest. But mind itself cannot solve this human problem. That is another lesson we see. That is another thing we see. And that is why Sri Krishna tells us, mental consciousness goes to a great extreme, but beyond that it cannot. When it comes to this cosmic human problem of suffering, mind has no answer. May it be through science, may it be through technology, may it be through religion, may it be through morality, mind comes to a cul-de-sac, the dead end. So Arjuna is again that lesson, that beyond it is only spirituality. It is only the higher consciousness which can fulfill. Just yesterday we were doing that line in Savitri. This higher consciousness, the heavens fulfill the earth and not cancel it. Remember that line. Heavens fulfill the earth and not cancel it. This is exactly the meaning. It is only when you go beyond the mind that what all the mind wanted to do will get fulfilled. So he says, it is typical again of the pragmatic man that it is through his sensation that he awakens to the meaning of his action. He has asked his friend and charioteer to place him between the two armies with this idea that there will be a holiday of fight. It is as he gazes that the revolution of the meaning of a civil and domestic war comes home to him. A war in which not only men of the same race, the same nation, the same clan, but those of the same family and household stand upon opposite sides. All whom the social man holds most dear and sacred, he must meet as enemies and slay. The worship teacher and preceptor, the old friend, comrade and companion in arms, grandsires, uncles, those who stood in the relation to him of father, of son, of grandson, connections by blood and connections by marriage. All these social ties have to be cut asunder by the sword. It is not that he did not know these things before, but he has never realized it at all. He realized it all. Obsessed by his claims and wrongs and about the principles of his life, the struggle for the right, the duty of the Kshatriya to protect justice and the law and fight and beat down injustice and lawless violence, he has neither thought out deeply nor felt it in his heart and at the core of his life. And now it is shown to his vision by the divine charioteer, placed sensationally before his eyes, and comes home to him like a blow delivered at the very center of his sensational, vital and emotional being. Well, we have come across this idea before, that he was a proud Kshatriya, a confident warrior, and who has always fought in the dharma of the Kshatriya, protecting the weak, not doing any injustice, bringing justice always to all the parties. So he has led his life like this. But it is only now that there is a blow delivered, and we have discussed why Sri Krishna brings now the blow. Because this is a moment of transition from the lower consciousness to the higher consciousness, from the mental religious consciousness to a spiritual consciousness. So Sri Krishna knew very well that this problem of this man, that he will be putting the moral foot forward, it will come later. It's better that it comes out now. Because once the war begins after 5th day or 6th day, suddenly if Arjuna says, I won't fight, then it's terrible. So before the war begins, and we know how many days was it? 18 days. And I think Iraq was, how many days? Iraq war? Something like that. Well, we can't compare the two, of course. So within this 18 days, a new consciousness will be born. The old has to be erased. And this is not out of antagonism. It's not that Sri Krishna did not love Kauravas. It's not that Sri Krishna was partial But the whole thrust of Sri Krishna was to bring in the new as fast, as quickly, as early, as completely as possible. So Kurukshetra is wiping away of the old and establishment of a new dharma. So he does whatever needs to be done, including that famous incident when he dips the sun, what is that story? When he puts a cloud over the sun so it's not seen, and somebody takes a vow. Remember the stories? Yeah, all of you know that. I don't have to narrate that. I'm just refreshing your memory. So it is said that he puts it, his what is that called? Sudarshan Chakra. He sends it and the sun is blocked. So people say, hey, he's a cheater. Shri Krishna is the greatest cheat because he has done all these tricks in the war. But the same Shri Krishna who's telling Arjuna, damn it, don't be a moralist, do you think he'll follow all the moral rules of cheating and not cheating? That you human beings have written in your books and in the scriptures. He is the Lord who's coming to establish the new. And is in a haste to do that. If he has to dip the sun or the moon 10 times, he would do it. But bring in the new as early as possible. So he is beyond this sense of morality. So Aurobindo says, don't stick to Sri Krishna, your moral rule number 1, commandment number 3, religious number book 4 and chapter 5 and sloka number 10. When he has come to break sarva dharman parityajya, he has come to break the old. And now the old wants to stick upon the avatar and says, hey, you are a cheat, you are a this, you are a lover, you are this, you have got 2 wives. What is all this nonsense? So this is how all the time the old tries to usurp the new. And that's exactly what's happening to Aurobindo. As I told you when I was recently in Bangladesh, there was a meeting of the Brahma Kumaris and they called us for a little bit of a chat perhaps. And what did the leader of the group say? Oh, I've heard Dr. Reddy, maybe it's my fault, He said, I've heard Dr. Reddy since the whole morning because I have been babbling ever for 6 hours that morning. He said, I understand Aurobindo well, and after all, now I realize what Brahma Kumaris say and what Aurobindo says, they are both the same philosophies. And I was shocked. I said, my God, did I speak so bad that I could not give the difference between Brahma Kumari philosophy and Aurobindo's philosophy? It's not the question of my misinterpretation. It's the question of the old trying to usurp the new and put on the garb of the new on itself and say, look, I'm also as modern, as new, as integral as Sri Aurobindo. So why don't you accept me? Sri Aurobindo and me are the same. So this is how, as the mother in her message tells, when the avatar comes, the new avatar comes, the old avatar is deified. I mean, there's more worship now in the temples, more people go to church and more people go to temple because the threat of religion is coming so very dire upon the modern world. The new avatar has come, but the people want to say, no, we don't want Sri Aurobindo. Why a new avatar? We have Krishna, we have Christ, we have this thing. So let's do more halabala, have more religions, have more creeds. So that's why you see in every other street a new creed is getting born every day. Because this is the thrust of the religious consciousness to try to exist, to justify itself. Saying, no, my period has not come to go. You see? A new creed has come. I've got 50,000 disciples. We have got 40,000. And Sri Aurobindo, he has got hardly 12,565. So I'm better than Sri Aurobindo. So this is the old consciousness. And this is what is there since time immemorial. Because this is exactly the human consciousness. When Sri Krishna comes, the older worship comes up. When Sri Aurobindo comes, the older worship comes up. So Mother said, this is the human tendency. We want to go back to the old. But then she said, it is only later we will see the work done by Sri Aurobindo for humanity. So we see the tendency here. what we are saying. Yeah. It is not that he did not know these things before, but they have been made aware now. That Arjuna becomes aware of himself now, and that too thanks to Shri Krishna. Well, here I will read a little bit of the next para, wherein we get this analysis that I had read out from the Gita. The physical reactions. The skin starts burning, the mouth, it gets parched. He gets all these feelings. So now Sri Aurobindo is getting a little deeper into this psychological analysis. The first result is a violent, sensational and physical crisis which produces a disgust of the action and its material objects and of life itself. You see, this is the process of ascetic renunciation. What Arjuna is representing here is the old consciousness of the ascetic renunciation, which was getting to be predominant in his times. So what Shri Krishna brings out of this Arjuna is to make a halt to this ascetic renunciation, which was gripping the Indian community and weakening it. So Arjuna brings out all this, and Shri Krishna answers to the need of the times. So what happens is, the first result is a violent, sensational and physical crisis. That is why the skin burning, the mouth becoming dry, and the whole feelings of feeling hollow. That's the physical level. He rejects the vital aim pursued by egoistic humanity in its action. So we have here we have of course read this already, all these descriptions have been given. I don't have to read them again. But this is actually chapter 1, verses 32 to 40. And we get all the details here. We have, you see the whole thing that I read, beginning with, what is kingdom to us, O Govinda, what enjoyment, what even life, etc. The whole question of the rejection of the vital aim pursued by egoistic humanity in its action. Because we want enjoyment, we want kingdom, we want pleasures, we want all this battle and riches. So after the physical rejection, then comes the vital rejection, the emotional vital rejection. I mean, you must appreciate how we see stage by stage rejection. That's what is important. Arjuna's despondency is not just a collapse of one part of his being, the total part. First there's the physical. He doesn't have even the strength to hold the Gandiva. The Gandiva is slipping from his hand because he doesn't have the physical strength. There's a physical collapse. Next comes the vital, the emotional collapse, where he has no desire, nothing wanting, neither the kingdom, nor the pleasures, nor the enjoyment. So happiness and enjoyment. He rejects the vital aim of the Kshatriya, victory and rule and power and the government of men. The Kshatriya always says, well, I'll be the ruler, the king. But even that is gone. What after all is this fight for justice when reduced to its practical terms, but just this, a fight for the interests of himself, his brothers and his party, for possession and enjoyment and rule? I mean, see this is the real Kshatriya. He says, why should I want this power and possession? For myself or my party. And today's politicians, for themselves and for the parties, they can kill a whole humanity, a whole section of humanity, just because they want their party, their names. That's selfish motivation. And look at this greatest warrior, he says, no. There is a higher dharma than this my possessing my little Congress government or the BJP or this or that. So you see, he was beyond this party politics, he was beyond this individual selfishness. And so he says, what should I? For possession and enjoyment and rule? But at such a cost, these things are not worth having. Nobody ever thinks in the present politics before they enter into the field and bring chaos into the society. Is it really worth? What are they gaining? Maybe from the back door a few lakhs of rupees, a little post. But nobody thinks of the nation. They all think of themselves and the party. For they are of no value in themselves, but only as a means to the right maintenance of social and national life. And it is these very aims that in the person of his kin and his race he is about to destroy. If Arjuna loved this country, he did not want to bring this chaos to the country. And then by killing these people, he would be bringing chaos to the country. He may win. Pandavas may win. But the country loses. You see, a beautiful consciousness. Today, politicians never think of that. Country may go to dogs. I am the so-and-so, my party is so-and-so. Let the country go to dogs. So there is no nationalism left, it is only partyism. So look at Arjuna, says, all this I will do and my country will be destroyed. And then comes the cry of the emotions. So till now we have the physical, vital dissolution and disillusionment. Next comes the higher emotions. And then comes the cry of the emotions. These are they for whose sake life and happiness are desired, our own people. So this concept of my own people, that's the emotional attachment. So even that he gets rid of. He says, why should I kill my own people? And remember what a beautiful psychology it is. My own people who are on the other side. It's not my people, means it's not the people who are fighting with me. So you see, his extension of my people is global. So he says, my people are there, my people are here. How can I kill my own people? And it's extremely difficult. And not only my people, my relatives, but the greatest acharyas. Dronacharya, his own master, his own guru in the arts, in the archery and in all the things that he learned. And then there's Bhishma Pitama, the most venerated man of his age. So he says, my people, who would consent to slay these for the sake of all the earth or even for the kingdom of the three worlds? What pleasure can there be in life? What happiness, what satisfaction in oneself after such a deed? So, we have here the physical, the lower vital, the emotional, and then he is really a sannyasi now. You see, in one point, from one angle, it is true there is a higher angle than the morality and religion. But from one angle, you see, at one stroke, he gets a complete detachment. Isn't that a great achievement? I mean, all his life and all our lives, we are getting to be more and more attached to wealth, to people, to country, to nation, to party, to politics and all that. But here is a man who has come to possess, he has got the real country in front of him. He could be the kingmaker of this country. But suddenly an absolute detachment. So this is the real spiritual man. And that is why now he is ready to get a new spiritual consciousness, because he has achieved the detachment. What we said in our chapter, the renunciation. The renunciation, what we saw, of the desire. Aurobindo, if you remember, those who came to the class, you would see the renunciation of the attachment and desire. Arjuna has gotten that. Renunciation of the self-will. We said, what is the self-will? The mental ego. The mental ego with my own prejudices and preferences and my own things. Arjuna renounces that. He has no mental ego. He doesn't want all this anymore. All his preferences, all his ideas, all his things he has collapsed. And the last thing is the sattvic ego. And there, the sattvic ego, when it compares the sin and virtue. So he says, even that I renounce. So in a way, Arjuna has renounced and is cleansed of his physical, mental and sattvic ego. So in a way, Sri Krishna is preparing him to get the higher consciousness. Understand that. And that's why this deep psychology goes so much beyond, and it tells us that we can be spiritual only when we are becoming non-egoistic, when we are renouncing our ego. And Arjuna is given that boon. At one moment, all his attachments are disconnected. That's a wonderful grace of the Lord, that he has been detached from all the three levels of ego.